A South Sound family calls it a grave mistake. An Olympia cemetery moved nearly a dozen buried remains, pulling them out of the ground, all because of a mistake decades in the making. New at 11, Como 4 problem solver John Humbert spoke with one of the outraged families. Now the city and the state are investigating.
This is wrong on so many levels.
Beth Johnson is taking another walk up the small hills and through the countless names at Forest Cemetery in Olympia.
This is my grandparents.
Orville and Louise Thompson, in love for decades and buried here together after being cremated.
You know, I'm gonna cry.
They are tears not of loss, but of disturbing revelations. Earlier this spring, the cemetery moved the Thompsons and other cremated remains, tearing them out and relocating them all in a clump on the other side of this stone monument.
She had chosen the spot that she had chosen, which was near the Bible, under the Lord's Prayer.
And no one from Forest Funeral Home bothered to tell Beth or her family.
They were torn out of the ground and moved like they were a tulip bulb.
The problem is that no one should have been buried there in the first place, let alone moved.
I realize we may have a problem here.
Rich Hoy with Olympia Public Works said the cemetery has been violating property rules for years and potentially decades. The city has a massive water line going underneath the cemetery.
It's conveying water that ultimately is fed to all points of the city and surrounding areas.
This isn't a new issue. The problem solvers uncovered documents showing a signed easement with Forest Cemetery requiring the land above the pipe to stay untouched. No monument, no remains, nothing. And it's been in effect since 1947.
They were supposed to have known not to bury any remains there.
That's correct.
The easement was created to make sure the area above the pipeline was completely clear, so if repairs had to be made, no remains needed to be disturbed. Other records discovered by the problem solvers reveal even when the city discovered the easement violation, it took nearly 2 years to get any action.
Even though they were told in August of 2011?
That's correct.
How is that acceptable?
Well, we realize the sensitivity of the situation here.
Sensitivity appears to have been lost along the way and compliance with state regulations.
Am I the first guy to ever come to your office and ask you about this stuff?
You are.
Brad Benfield is with the State Department of Licensing, the people who regulate the funeral industry.
A lot of people would be surprised at just how many laws there are that have to be complied with.
One of those laws involves notification. State rules say funeral homes must tell family members if remains are going to be moved. And if they can't find the family, they have to go to court to get it done. Beth said none of that happened, and she filed a formal complaint with the state.
I don't think this is right. Why didn't we know that this happened before it happened? Who was here to witness my grandparents being moved?
Records show Forest said it obtained permission from at least 2 families, but in its response to the state, the cemetery gave no proof, documentation, or even basic facts about how many families had been affected. The cemetery wrote that it believed it had every right to refurbish the monument. The cemetery refused to speak with us on camera and told Johnson it was just too complicated to get permission from everyone.
There's just too many people involved. We'd been on the phone forever if we'd had to call everybody.
So the investigation continues, an eternal resting place disturbed, and maybe not for the last time.
They moved him. They just plucked him out of the ground.
John Humbert, Como 4 problem solvers.
The state has no timeline on releasing the findings from the investigation. Punishment could range from reprimands to fines to losing a license.